So, Anthem, BioWare's infamous looter shooter that shut down not too long ago on January 12th, is already back from the dead. And I'm not talking about some wishful thinking or a petition. I'm talking about actual working private servers running right now, less than 2 weeks after EA pulled the plug. So let me explain how this happened, why it matters, and whether this resurrection actually has legs. First, let's talk about what just happened. EA announced back in July of 2025 that Anthem would be shutting down January 12th, 2026. That gave players about 6 months or so to say their goodbyes. And when that date hit, at approximately 2:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the last few players that were able to get in and play the game got unceremoniously booted from their sessions. Connection lost, error retrieving live service data, game over. Now, here's the kicker. EA made Anthem uninstallable before the shutdown date even hit. So if you didn't already have it downloaded, you were kind of just tough out of luck because you couldn't download it anymore. You couldn't even grab it for one last flight. Just one final slap in the face from a game that basically was defined by disappointment, but we'll get into that. Right around the shutdown, former BioWare executive producer Mark Darrow dropped a nearly 4-hour-long video breaking down everything that went wrong with Anthem's development. And buried in that autopsy was an absolute bombshell. To quote, Anthem actually had the code for local servers running in a dev environment right up until a few months before launch. I don't know that they still work, but the code is there to be salvaged and recovered. Think about that for a second. Anthem, this always online live service game that just died because EA had to turn off the servers, actually had peer-to-peer hosting capabilities built into it until right before launch. Players could have been hosting their own sessions this whole time. Dara even laid out a whole plan for how EA could revive Anthem as a single-player game for about $10 million. Update the visuals to more current-gen standards, add AI companions with actual personalities, and basically turn it into the BioWare game it probably should have been from the start. His exact words are, is EA going to do this? Almost definitely not. Yeah, no kidding. EA wants this game dead and buried. It's going to be in their little shame corner for the rest of eternity as far as they're concerned. They've just been trying to scrub this game from their balance sheet for years. But here's where it gets interesting, because less than a week after the servers went dark, a developer going by And799 posted a proof of concept video showing Anthem running on a completely local server. And not just running either. They got 2 players connected simultaneously. You can see both characters running around, interacting with the world. It's laggy, yeah, it's incomplete. Player profiles don't work yet, but the game is running without EA servers. That means it took 5 days, just 5 days, for someone to essentially crack Anthem's server infrastructure and get it working locally. Now, And799 was very clear in their video description. This is just research, just a proof of concept. It doesn't represent the current state of any full revival project. Quote, seems like the majority of the player data are handled through BioWare's server instead of Blaze, and it is required for the game to be able to load offline. So there's still a ton of work to do, but the fact that it's working at all is actually pretty huge. So let's be real about what this actually means though, because creating a full private server for Anthem is not like just flipping a switch. This is a live service game with pseudo MMO architecture. It's going to require some real serious reverse engineering, network analysis, and coding expertise. One community member on Reddit described this work as a really hacky thing and told people to temper their expectations. the technical challenges for something like this are really significant. Online games have two separate code bases, more or less, right? We're going to condense this down. You have a client side and a server side. Players have access to the client, but the server code, that's locked up at BioWare. One developer even pointed out, altering code isn't all that difficult, but the decompilation step is nearly impossible. So here's the thing. It has actually been done before. Titanfall 2 players, for example, created North Star, an alternative to the official servers. Star Wars Battlefront 2 has Kyber, a complete conversion mod with dedicated servers currently in open beta. Both of these games are EA, by the way, so there is precedent for this exact scenario. And the community is even organizing. There's a Discord server called The Forts Forge with about 440 members specifically dedicated to preserving and potentially reviving Anthem. The Anthem subreddit, which was about to be archived and locked because the game is shut down, is actually staying open because of all this renewed interest. The moderators literally announced that they were shutting it down and then reversed course because of all of this. This whole situation connects to something so much larger. Yes, I'm bringing it up again, the Stop Killing Games movement. This initiative argues that when you buy a game, you should have final say on when you're done with it, not the publisher. An oversimplified distillation of what it is. You can go ahead and check it out. Links in the description. But Anthem is actually a perfect example of why this matters, right? People paid full price for this game, $60 at launch. Some bought the Legion of Dawn edition for even more money, and now it's just gone. Completely unplayable. All that money, all that time invested is erased because EA decided it wasn't worth keeping the servers running. Now, I don't blame them for that. They made a crappy game. They weren't making a lot of money for it. But that's besides the point. Even Mark Dara acknowledged this concept in his video, ultimately supporting the Stop Killing Games movement, arguing that publishers should be required to preserve games in at least some playable form. The fact that EA made Anthem uninstallable before the shutdown date shows you exactly how little they care about game preservation or any form of digital consumer rights. And this is a company actively trying to memory hole one of their biggest failures. And look, let's not pretend Anthem was just some misunderstood masterpiece. The game was a disaster. Launching in February 2019 to terrible reviews, technical issues, underwhelming story, bland loot systems, grindy gameplay loops that all went nowhere. It sold about 2 million copies at launch, hit 5 million total over its entire lifetime, and for a game that was supposed to be BioWare's next big franchise, that's embarrassing. I mean, the development was also a nightmare. Unclear vision, constant reworks, people getting pulled off the project to work on FIFA, and they built it on the Frostbite engine, which was completely wrong for this type of game. And the project lead even left during critical development phases. Dara himself said, and I quote, "To be honest, I'm not sure that I came back from Anthem. I think that's true of a lot of people. Anthem did permanent damage to the careers of a lot of game devs, to the mental health of a lot of game devs." And that's really heavy. That's a senior producer admitting that working on this game broke people. But here's what makes this resurrection effort interesting. The one thing that Anthem got right was the movement. Everyone who played it, even the harshest of critics, agreed that flying around in those javelin suits felt incredible. One player described it perfectly in their final moments with the game, saying, "The poetic nature of it is that the game is unfinished and we were not done playing it." Streamers doing final goodbye broadcasts were having a blast with the movement mechanics. Shield bashing as a Colossus, carving through strongholds as an interceptor, the core gameplay loop of flying through waterfalls to cool your suit, dodging wyverns, navigating the gorgeous environment, that part worked. And I think that's why people ultimately want to save it, not because Anthem was great, But because there's nothing else quite like it, the specific feeling of being Iron Man in a lush alien world, you can't get that anywhere else. And in the hands of the right people in a community that can see the vision and is willing to actually put the care and love into it that it deserves, could actually be something good. But what's actually going to happen here, honestly, I'd say there's maybe a 40 to 60% chance we see some form of playable private servers in the next year or two. It's also not going to be easy. The technical challenges are real. Anthem's server architecture is beyond complex. A lot of player data and game logic is handled on the server side, which means recreating it requires either accessing code that BioWare isn't going to hand over or reverse engineering everything from scratch. And that's a lot harder than it sounds. But the fact that it got working even in a limited capacity after just 5 days suggests it is possible. And the fact that the local server code existed at all means the foundation is there. Compare this to something like Club Penguin or Lego Universe, which both got community revivals after Shutdown, or look at City of Heroes. That game has multiple private servers running right now, years after the official shutdown. Let's be real here, guys. The PC community has a decent track record of just refusing to let games die. If there's demand, if there's technical feasibility, someone will probably make it happen, even if it's just for the technical challenge of it all. The big unknown is whether EA will try to kill this with a cease and desist. And they absolutely could. They own the IP. They could shut down any private server project whenever they want. But here's the thing, would they? Anthem is an embarrassment to them. They want everyone to forget it existed. Sending legal threats to a small community trying to keep the game alive just brings more attention to their failure. Plus, there's the precedent with Titanfall 2 and Battlefront 2. Those are both EA games with live community-run servers, and EA hasn't touched them as of yet. So maybe because they're old enough, EA doesn't care, or maybe because going after fans is just really bad PR. I could see EA taking the approach of just ignoring this unless it gets too big. Let a few hundred diehard fans keep the private servers. Don't make a fuss. Hope everyone forgets Anthem existed. I could see that being the case. And this is where I have to put on a preservation hat for a moment, because regardless of whether you think Anthem deserves to be saved, the principle still matters here. We're in an era where more and more games are online only. Live service, games as a service, always connected, DRM, and every single one of those games is on borrowed time. So when the publisher decides it's not profitable anymore, it just disappears. And that's not really how this should work. When you buy a game, you should own it, which is what the Stop Killing Games movement is pushing for. Again, links in the description if you want to check it out. It's a little overly complicated to explain right now. That's not what this video is ultimately about. But what they're going for, I think, is completely reasonable. You made this thing, you sold it to people, you profited off of it. You shouldn't just get to delete it from existence when it stops making money. That doesn't mean you should have to financially support it for all time, right? There's a middle ground in there, and that's what they're shooting for. Studios should be allowed to try new things, but here's the problem. When you tie that creative risk to always online servers that you can just pull the plug on whenever you want, you're not just risking the game's success. You are risking its entire existence. Single player BioWare games from 20 years ago are still playable today, but Anthem, which came out in 2019, is already gone. 7 years. That's all it got. It's not a sustainable model for game preservation. That's not respecting the work of the developers who poured years of their lives into this thing, and it's definitely not respecting the players who bought it. So where does this leave us? Anthem is technically dead, but maybe not permanently, because that small group of dedicated fans is working to bring it back, and they've already made more progress than anyone expected. Will we see full private servers with all features working? Maybe. Will EA shut it down? More, maybe. Will anyone actually play it if it works? I mean, that's hard to say, but the fact that it's happening at all sends a message. Players are not okay with games being deleted from existence. The community has tools, skills, and determination. So when publishers abandon their games, fans will step in to preserve them. Whether Anthem deserves that effort is up to the fans and those running that preservation effort to decide. But ultimately, no matter what you think, the principle is sound. Games are art, games are culture. They deserve to be preserved, not erased when they're stopped being profitable. So, to everyone at the Forge Forge working on this, good luck. You are fighting the good fight, not just for Anthem, but for every game that's been killed by a corporate decision. And to EA, you shut down the servers, but you can't kill the community. Freelancers might fly again after all. Anyway, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and peace out.